So a direct request came from the party global leader, generally to members in positions of responsibility, but specifically to me as well, to go to Pakistan. So in '99, I went to Pakistan to initiate Hizb ut-Tahrir in Pakistan. I had some success in Pakistan, to the extent that eventually the ISI put me on their blacklist. So I believe I'm currently on the blacklist of the Pakistani intelligence services. And sadly and regrettably, the people that I recruited were, when the party was eventually banned in Pakistan, the people that I recruited were subsequently arrested and tortured in prisons.
After a year in Pakistan, Majid returned to his studies in London, but travelled to Denmark every weekend to establish the Danish chapter of Pakistani recruits to Hizb ut-Tahrir. In September 2001, he travelled to Egypt to study as part of his Arabic and law degree.
I arrived in Egypt one day before the 9/11 attacks, and that sort of affected later on what happened to me there as well. But when I heard about the news of 9/11, I think my initial reaction was one of indifference, to be honest. I was just indifferent to it because I was so angry about the other sort of killings that have been going on in the world. It's only, I think, later on in prison that I started, whilst I was separated from everyone else and I had time to think on my own, that I started fully realizing the implications in terms of in the cost of human lives and the cost of human relations.
Hizb ut-Tahrir is banned in Egypt, and though not expressly there for the party, Majid continued to propagate their ideas while studying in Cairo, and was subsequently arrested in April 2002.
I was surprised by a dawn raid. They came in with masks on and machine guns and hand grenades, and they arrested me at gunpoint and were subjected to 4 days of torture, whether direct or indirect, having people tortured in front of us. And most of the torture occurred by electrocution. And after the first 4 days, I was put into solitary confinement in cells where there was no sanitation, there were no beds, there was no light, there was no toilet, and we were held in solitary confinement for about 3 months. I began thinking after those initial difficult days that I could perceive myself very easily turning to violence. So I became very close to tipping into allowing for myself terrorism. I didn't sort of allow myself to fully adopt that, but I became dangerously close to that. And when that happened, I had time to sort of then, afterwards in prison, to then reconsider everything I believed in and to try and think, is there a better way than just meeting oppression and anger with more anger?
Last year, Majid Nawaz was released from prison. 4 years in a Cairo cell, away from Hizb ut-Tahrir and with access to traditional Islamic texts, not party literature, had made him question the theological foundations of what he'd believed for 12 years.
I developed serious doubts in my mind about the ideology of Hizb ut-Tahrir, and it was very, very difficult for me to come to terms with that, because it was as if I was doubting my religion. I regret my whole association with Hizb ut-Tahrir and the way in which I propagated those ideas, but I also just regret propagating a very politicized version of Islam as if that is the only interpretation of Islam, and telling everyone else they're wrong because they didn't agree with the interpretation of the party.
Now Nawaz wants to persuade other members of Hizb ut-Tahrir to leave the party, and has started to publish a series of papers arguing against the theological basis of Hizb ut-Tahrir ideas.
What I'm trying to do is to present to them the plethora of interpretations within Islam and how it's not just black and white. I need to take responsibility for what I did. I played a large part of the spread of the growth of Islamist ideology in Britain amongst the youth. But I will continue to speak out against the oppression of Muslim leaders, dictators in the Muslim world, because that goes hand in hand.
Despite his criticisms of the party, Majid Nawaz is not joining calls for Hizb ut-Tahrir to be banned in Britain.
I expressly and explicitly say to the members I want them to leave Hizb ut-Tahrir, because I believe Hizb ut-Tahrir is an obstacle to the Muslim community moving forward, not only in this country, but in the world in general. My ideal scenario would be not to ban the party, but it would be that through the power of discussion and persuasion, that eventually the party would fizzle out in this country and hopefully generally throughout the world.
In July this year, Majid Nawaz finally graduated from university 10 years after he started his degree.
I'll just chop it now. Yeah, I'll just chop it.
He's back in Southend, restarting his life where he left off at 16.
Muslims in Britain need to start taking responsibility for their society. I don't think we should separate ourselves in this society as a separate faction or a fifth column. I'm British, I'm a British Muslim, and I don't see any contradiction between those two terms.
Well, we invited Hizb ut-Tahrir to respond to the revelations in that film, but they didn't want to come on. Instead, they told us that opinion poll after opinion poll indicate that the Muslim world today rejects colonialism, whether manifested through occupation or Western-backed dictators, and is firmly behind Islamic political parties like Hizb ut-Tahrir, who call for the caliphate, a ruling system that reflects Islam's political and moral standards. The increasing propaganda against the caliphate is a last-ditch attempt by Western governments to prop up these ailing dictators. We are happy to say that such attempts will inevitably fail. We asked the Home Office to respond. They said Hizb ut-Tahrir remains a group of real concern and as such is kept under continuous review. However distasteful remarks made by organisations are, prescription must be proportionate and based on evidence that a group is concerned in terrorism as defined in the Terrorism Act 2000. We strengthened the law in 2006 to include the unlawful glorification of terrorism. Joining me now is Patrick Mercer, the Conservative Security Advisor to the Prime Minister. What do you make of it then?
I think we've got this quite badly confused. I think that we jumped the gun horribly, that Tony Blair jumped the gun horribly after the July bombings in 2005. And you remember the much vaunted 12-point plan that he brought out. And one of the very clear recommendations that he made was that Hizb ut-Tahrir should be banned. And the Conservative Party, myself and others, took him to task on exactly that. Now, it hasn't been banned because there is lack of evidence.
Should it be banned?
If there is the evidence. Well, the problem...
You saw the film.
Yeah, the problem is going to come that if the evidence is not good enough, and if Hizb ut-Tahrir appeals and wins the appeal, then the government's going to look pretty silly.
Hang on, your party wanted to ban Hizb ut-Tahrir, and now you're saying they should be banned if there's the evidence. If there isn't the evidence, they're going to look pretty silly.
If the evidence is not correct...
Well, do you think they should be banned or not?
I believe that there is a very strong case for assembling the evidence to get them banned. But if that evidence is not correct, then really we're going to be in a difficult position with it.
But you're calling for them to be banned.
I have been calling for them to be banned, yes. The evidence has got to be absolutely firm, though, if we're going to get them banned, and that's going to stand up.
And in your view, it's not firm?
Everything that I have heard so far, everything I have heard, says that they are a dangerous organisation that leads people on a conveyor belt to terrorism.
But even that very brave witness there did not say they were advocating terrorism. He said that they felt all means were justifiable to defend the caliphate once it had been established, but he didn't say they were advocating terrorism.
And this is why I think we got it wrong in the first place in 2005 by saying so very clearly, the Prime Minister said so very clearly, they've got it banned. Possibly. This was wrong. I have been saying in the past, absolutely, that they have got to be banned. If the evidence is not there, then we're going to have egg on our faces.
Patrick Mercer, thank you.
Thank you.